Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather, one of the co-sponsors, co-builders of Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Now, today we want to talk about how most leaders don't fail because they stop caring. They fail because they can't stop adding more initiatives, more hours, more optimization until the very effort that built their success starts to quietly undermine it. And for women in leadership, the pressure to prove, perform, and hold it all together compounds that pattern in ways that rarely get an honest conversation, something we hope to have today. Today's guest is Nell Derick Debevoise Dewey, aka Nell 3D, a Harvard trained leadership advisor, self described subtraction activist, and someone whose most unlikely teacher in systems thinking has been horses. Nell helps high performing women leaders do more good without piling on more to dos, using frameworks grounded in living systems rather than productivity and culture. In this conversation, she'll walk us through why subtraction is not a retreat, it's a strategy, and share a practical framework you can use this week to reclaim clarity without dropping your responsibilities. Nell, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I feel like this is something that every leader deals with. Thank you for your time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Dale. Yep, that's my experience. It is pretty universal, but we'll get there.
So I'm interested. You described a point where more effort produces less clarity. And I think I know what you mean. But for the leaders listening who suspect they might be kind of past this point, which I'll be honest, is probably most of us, what are the early warning signs that we're likely rationalizing away just to kind of keep doing what we're doing?
Yeah, there are several. And as you said, it's pretty widespread these days to the point that I think they don't even look like signals. They look like normal, right? It's the water in which we swim.
Right.
And so, one is a calendar that doesn't have any white space on it, just very probably actually has some overlaps of different conflicting meetings, which as far as I can tell, is physically impossible to be on two Zooms at once. I've tried; it doesn't go well. And then there's just the kind of narrative version of that is, how are you, busy? That kind of glorification of busy as valued or important. The one that I really encourage people to get more attuned to is actually physical, right? We tend to run around in our heads being very smart and very intelligent and very strategic. I know that's a lot of your work, but turns out there are these things that carry our heads around known as bodies, which are really essential to keep the heads going straight. And so, one thing that I talk about is these mini collisions. I had quite a major collision. We may get there in the stories, but I don't know about listeners. I stub my toe and bump into counters all the time. Like, I never don't have a straight bruise on my thigh. And I'm a little bit clumsy. I'm not necessarily an athlete by design. So maybe that's me. But I've talked to several people who are like, oh, totally.
Yeah.
Pay attention to that, right? And then to say nothing of, worked with a fabulous, very, very senior corporate woman with a very big girl job, and her hair was falling out.
Oh my.
And, she's like, I think, is it vitamin D or whatever? I'm like, maybe it's your life. Like, maybe there's too much going on. So, these physical symptoms, colds that drag on for months and months, not sleeping, sleeping too much, right? Any of these kind of body things that don't feel normal, tune in, because that might be a data point as well.
I love that. I there's this somewhat annoying turn of phrase that we're human beings, not human doings. And I feel a little dirty even saying that because I'm not a fan of the phrase, but it resonates in this instance because I agree. Like sometimes we get so caught up in the doing, we ignore the being and like how we're feeling. It makes me think I was talking to a friend over the weekend who had just like for the first time in their life gotten diagnosed with ADHD and started taking medication for it and was like, the difference is like mind-blowing, right? And I wonder how many people out there are so caught up in the struggle that they're ignoring not only the symptoms you're talking about, like, but some of the basic things that maybe they could just get support with in some simple ways and make a real
Yeah.
difference.
Totally. And look, I mean, thank goodness, right? Psychology has come so far and
Right.
the diagnosis of that is powerful and the treatment because there's real treatment. So fabulous. And I want to suggest that there are a lot of self-imposed attention deficits.
Yeah.
Right. And so, again, not to minimize a very real clinical neurological situation that can be aided by pharmacology, which is great, but also, just look
Right.
around.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
attention is not something that's being stewarded
Right.
carefully in so many cases. And that's where doing more subtracts that clarity, right? That's the problem because our bodies aren't physically well. And so there's this kind of, you know, pang of the bruise on the thigh or the hair falling out, or
Right.
because our attention is so scattered that, work today requires a lot of attention. Like
Yeah.
it's very complicated. So it does not take 80% of our best mind, it takes 100%. And so, that is where trying to do 100 things to 100% is just a mathematical impossibility. We can only
Yeah.
improve things when there's available capacity to improve it. And so that, when we don't have that capacity, the clarity just goes out the window.
Oh, yeah. Well, and one of the sayings I use a lot with my kids is you can do anything, but not everything.
Mm.
Um, and I think in today's world, that actually feels like heresy in a way, right? Uh, because this idea that you can do less and have more impact. I mean, it's a core of like what we talk about at Centered and what we do in our workshops and things like that. But it's a really hard sell in a lot of organizations, especially for individual leaders. That if they do a
Mhm.
little bit less, they can be larger impact overall.
Mhm.
When you're working with a leader who is on the intellectual agreement side of things, like I can see this, yes, I can see it, but she can't actually bring herself to actually stop or cut something out.
Yeah.
What are the things that are holding her back? Like, what can she do?
Yeah. So it's an uphill battle, not because we're dumb or
Right.
resistant to change or whatever, but because there is a massive infrastructure behind more. Right? So everything from like school and gold stars and the career ladder,
Yeah.
right? Of linearly stepping up to more and more and more direct reports, more clients, more revenue, more visibility, whatever that more is. And now in our society of like more mindfulness, more meditation, more protein, more muscle, more, it's just that's what the 3D of my name comes from is a three-dimensional approach to life, which is pursuing me goals, we goals, and the world. And
Right.
so that system, that three-part system is just real. It's how we exist. There's no changing of that. But either we can be kind of victim to it in all these ways, or we can leverage it and really lean in and say, I'm going to intentionally recognize the links between all these things,
Yeah.
right? But in all three of those areas, we have this massive uphill battle because of the best engineers, the best advertisers, the best behavioral psychologists, the best coders, all pulling at us to do more, to do
Right.
everything all the time. So, first of all, a little grace, right? That like we're not idiots that we can't put down the phone, even though we know we're tired and should be sleeping or working out or doing whatever else.
Yeah.
We're up against this infrastructure. So that's the first thing. Is just a deep breath of like give yourself grace. Of course, this is difficult.
Yeah.
And then the next steps, there's kind of two layers to it. One is a metaphor that I like to use of like picture a floodlight, right? And like in some ways that's really appealing. Like I'm going to be a floodlight for my team, for my industry, and just shine a light on everything we're trying to do. But what happens when you make that a laser?
Mm.
You can cut stuff.
Yeah.
You can heal things, right? And so I think that's the paradigm shift that we really need to have is like it's not most of our jobs to light up an entire warehouse
Yeah.
or field, right? It's our job to get something done. And you need the specificity and the concentration of a laser to do it. And so, again, this subtraction is not about dropping balls or disappointing people or sacrificing your ambition. It's about being really smart and intentional about how that ambition is going to get done in today's chaotic, ever changing world. And the answer is a laser.
Mm. Where does delegation fit into the subtraction? Because as you were talking that was, and going through that, that was the word that kept popping up in my mind. So I'm curious your perspective there.
So super important. And the second part that I resisted from going on to, because I know I can get long winded. So thank you for the question. You intuited, you picked up what I was carrying. And there's, so it's really juicy, right? Because there's a version of delegation, which is like putting the shit down
Letting it
the
flow
plunge,
downhill. Yeah.
you know. Well, I think most of us carrying ambitious, big-hearted leaders, women or men or people of any gender, don't want to be seen to do that. We've
Right.
probably been on the receiving end of that, and that's not the answer, right? And so that's where the second piece of what I was going to say is that sometimes if somebody gets it intellectually but can't quite make the move into practicing this, what I say is, how do you want your mentee to live?
Mm.
How do you want your daughter, son, niece
Yeah.
to live as they come up in the work world? Do you want their hair to be falling out and them to be working till 10 p.m. after dinner every night? Is that what you want for them? Because what you model is what they will do and receive. And so, yes, delegation is critical here. I wrote a whole Forbes piece about how it's a gift to do it well, right? And not let the shit slide down
Right.
the hill, but actually be really intentional about this is what matters. And maybe a little prematurely, I'm going to gift you this responsibility and
Right.
trust you with it, right? And let that be a growth experience. And you now are going to have to get really good at subtraction and filtering and becoming a laser in your own world so that you can handle this prize that I've just given you of a task that maybe represents a step up or across
Right.
the organization.
No, I love that. And I feel like, so you talk about your framework, stop, drop, and roll. And I feel like a lot of what we're talking about is now leading towards that framework. So maybe before we go too far down this, what to do, talk a little bit about the stop, drop, roll framework, and maybe break it down in a way that a listener could apply it before their next meeting, before their next day, before their next whatever, so like what it looks like in practice.
Yeah, totally. So the inspiration, which many listeners probably know, I think we're kind of generationally aligned. And so,
Yeah.
it's the firemen, the big firemen come in their truck with their axe and their hats and their jackets. And they're like, if something on your body catches on fire,
Yep.
and as an 8-year-old, you're like, something on my body might catch on fire. That's terrifying. So you're like really listening. You're like, what should I
Yep.
do? And they're like, well, you stop, you drop to the floor and you roll around. And so when as I started learning subtraction, practicing it myself, guiding other leaders through it, I realized like this is how we need to do it. So stop, again, is not a retreat. It's not going to meditate on the mountain or taking a sabbatical. If you want to do those things or need them,
Yeah.
so be it. I'm so happy for that. But that's not what I'm talking about. It is an in situ, in your seat, eyes wide open data collection of, am I bumping into tables? Is my hair falling out?
Mm.
Are my clients not calling back or not renewing like they used to? Am I kind of cut off from the production side where I need to be involved and I'm not having those conversations, right? Data looks like a lot of different things. It's quantitative, it's qualitative, it's spontaneous in the moment, 10 seconds before you log into Zoom. It's some kind of longitudinal tracking that you might do for yourself, right? It's all of these things. But we gotta check in with how it's actually going before we can make a systematic subtraction. Because again, this isn't just like, you know what, screw that meeting. It's never that helpful. I'm just going to stop doing it. Nobody reads these reports. I'm going to not file it and see what happens. That's not what we're doing.
Right.
And so step one is stop. And again, you can absolutely do this before your next meeting. Take 90 seconds as Zoom loads, as you walk down the hallway, whatever that interstitial moment is, and just check in. If it's a body scan, am I walking around like this with my shoulders at my ears?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not optimal. So What would it feel like to breathe and let them drop? Simple, right? So anyway, data can go deep, but it doesn't have to. It's a little piece. Only then do we move to drop. And this is the juicy part. This is the subtraction. But it's an experiment in subtraction. It's not, I'm never speaking to that colleague again. I hate yoga and I'll never enter the studio again. I have stopped cooking dinner. Good luck, order takeout, right? Like, again, if you know that, power to you. But this is like, I really haven't spoken up in that meeting for a while. Speaking of delegation, this direct report sits in that meeting. We all get AI notes. She tags me if there's something that we need to deliver or if there's something she didn't understand. Maybe I could use those 30 minutes to do some research and read
Yeah.
some mind expanding news about our industry, or tidy my inbox so I don't have to do that at home, or call
Yeah.
an old colleague who's at a competitor, whatever the thing is, right? But it's this little experiment that I'm encouraging people to do, not like blow up your life.
No, I love that.
And finally, role is why we can do less and do more good or have more impact, because we use systems thinking to recognize nothing in our lives are a straight line. Maybe our toaster is. You push a button, it toasts, it ejects the bread.
Yeah.
Usually not to the optimal level of brownness in my experience, but anyway. Everything else, our company, regardless of the protocols and of the paradigms and the setups that they have, is not a linear thing, right?
Yeah.
Advertising affects finance, affects supply chain, affects our producers, affects our customers, affects our communities, affects our HR, and
Right.
so forth, and everything in between. So make no mistake, it is a system. And by recognizing that, we open these phenomenal win-win-wins, right? Within the company. Gosh, it turns out when finance is thinking really strategically about interest rates, our suppliers are happier with our payment terms and deliveries arrive more promptly and production flows a lot more smoothly. That's making customers really happy.
Mm.
Right. So, and then of course, as humans, which is all leaders, when we zoom out and recognize the 3D system of me, my hair not falling out, my sleep, my mindfulness, all of that, my we, which is my team and my company and my family and my world, some little piece of impact that I want to have on the communities around me, that also unlocks win-win-wins. And so now, by passing off said meeting, delegating it to an able junior, finishing my email in that chunk, I go home and have a really present, maybe even fun, maybe hard, but juicy conversation with my kid or my spouse. And
No,
the
I love that.
ripples continue from there.
No, I love that. I think it's not just work. It's a kind of a life lesson. It's that it is the act of filtering and understanding where you spend your most valuable resource, your time.
1,000%.
Now, we could continue this conversation for another half hour. I already thought of like 6 different questions I'd love to ask, but we do have to wrap up. For people who are looking for some support, looking to consult with the subtraction expert, what's the best way for them to reach out and get into contact?
So Subtract to Succeed is my Substack. And I will send you a guest pass so that your listeners can get 90 days free. A lot of the essays are free, but then there is this really exciting paywalled part, which is truly my laboratory. The book is in the works, so probably fall 2027, but publishers take a long time these
Yeah.
days. So we're being patient and building the method and the audience and the community around subtraction there on the Substack. And we're kind of 2/3 of the way through a 100-day daily practice, which I'm having so much fun with it. I'm watching other people have fun and really change their leadership, but also their lives. So a very warm welcome and invitation. There's a mini course on systematic subtraction to get a little more of the theory behind this, as well as some of my personal experiences. That collision I mentioned, that's a powerful story involving a tow truck and some firemen in a different way than stop, drop, roll. So I'll leave that as a tease. But then there's this daily practice, which is evergreen. And I think, I've just seen in my own life and for other people, that's the work. It's a daily effort, like we lift heavy weights to build bone density and stability. We got to build the muscle of subtraction to counter that infrastructure of gold stars and attention robbing. So yeah, come check out the Substack. I'd love to see you there.
Fantastic. Well, Nell, thank you so much for the time. And for everyone else who's made it all the way to the end with us, while you're down there leaving that 5-star review, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Talk about where you could do some subtracting in your life and where you might need some support. We'd love to hear from you. And if you know someone else who maybe is taking off a little bit more, biting off a little bit more than they can chew, introduce them to Nell through this episode and share the wealth. That said, Nell, thank you again so much. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Total pleasure, JL. Thank you.
And for everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.